Right. Welcome to another enlightening episode of the Zarlequan podcast. I'm your host, Brittani Starr, and today we have a truly inspirational guest with us today. Our guest today is Angie Read, a resilient and remarkable individual who has overcome immense challenges. Angie's life took an unexpected turn when she had a massive stroke at the age of 46, altering the course of her career and introducing her to a new battle: post-stroke anxiety and depression. But Angie didn't let these obstacles define her. Instead, she became an advocate for mental health and a beacon of hope for stroke survivors. Angie is the author of The Invisible Scars: Stroke Survival, Recovery, and the Unexpected Mental Health Fallout, a book that offers invaluable insights into coping with anxiety and depression after a stroke. She's also penned Mental Health Hacks: 10 Easy Hacks to Help Manage Anxiety and Depression and Identity Crisis. You Are Not Your Career, soon to be released. In today's episode, Angie will share her remarkable journey and tools and techniques that have helped her navigate the unexpected mental health challenges post-stroke and the wisdom she's gained along the way. Get ready for some personal development with Self-Development Sundays right now. Welcome, Angie.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Can you share a little bit more about your journey from being a successful public relations professional to an author and advocate for mental health?
Yeah, well, it's certainly not the path that I thought I was going to take or that I thought my life would take when I was 46. But I woke up one morning, I was completely a healthy adult, or so I thought. I woke up one morning and I couldn't get out of bed. So I couldn't get up and get ready for work, which is what I was planning on doing on a Tuesday morning. And I I couldn't move anything on the left side of my body. I didn't really know what was happening to me. I just knew that I couldn't get out of bed for some reason. Your mind doesn't really put two and two together that, hey, my body's not moving the way I'm telling it to. And I woke up my husband because I was kind of making some jerking movements. And he was like, "Are you drunk?" Or first he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm trying to get up and take a shower." And he said, "Are you drunk? You sound drunk." And I said, "It's 6:30 in the morning. No, I'm not drunk." And he said, I can't understand what you're saying. So I'm going to get up and turn the light on. And he got up, turned the light on, and then he looked at me and said, "The left side of your face looks like it's like sliding off. I think you're having a stroke. I'm going to call 911." My first thought was, no, don't call 911. I'm sure I'm fine. I'm probably still just half asleep. But thankfully, he didn't listen to me. The EMTs came and immediately said, "Yeah, looks like you're having a stroke." So I went to the hospital and they did an emergency thrombectomy. So they went up through my groin artery, and then it's a laser guided scope. They went up into my brain and pulled the clot out. I was awake during the whole surgery. I could feel it. I felt like my brain just hurt really bad. My head hurt really bad. And I said something like, "Ouch, that hurts." And they said, "Yep, we're pulling the clot out." Um, so I was in neuro ICU for about 4 days. But then after the surgery, I was able to get some movement back on my left side. So it was almost miraculous, like how quickly it was gone and then how quickly it came back. Um, it's crazy because I've always been super career driven. I've always been after that next, what's the next big thing I can do in my career? And that day, that Tuesday, I was supposed to be on a conference call for a New York trip that I was planning a few days later. Um, and the girl called me on my phone and I answered. I answered from the hospital bed. And I was like, "Hey, I'm sorry. I don't think I can talk today. I had a stroke." And it was just one of those things that I wasn't expecting, and I just felt like I needed to go about my daily life. But I did not understand that my life was about to change in a huge way.
Wow. Can you tell us, for those of us that really don't have experience with this and don't understand, can you tell us about the unique mental health challenges that a stroke survivor goes through?
Yeah, there are two conditions called post-stroke anxiety (PSA) and post-stroke depression (PSD). And nobody really talks about it. You don't hear your neurologists talking about these conditions. But really, one in four, so 25% of stroke victims or stroke survivors will have post-stroke anxiety, and then 1 in 3, so 30%, 33%, will have post-stroke depression. And they're just debilitating conditions that make you just unable to function normally. Um, Anxiety can present it just, ongoing feelings of nervousness, just and fear. And for me, it just always felt like I had bricks on, like a pound of bricks on my chest or something. Like I couldn't quite breathe in all the way. And I was anxious and I was nervous all the time. I had gone back to work about 2 months after the stroke, after having gone through all my rehabilitation and feeling like I rocked it because I graduated all my rehabilitation. So I was so proud of myself and I was ready to go back to work, or so I thought. My brain was not quite ready yet. And I was a writer. I mean, I had just written and published my very first book. And when I got back to work from having the stroke, I couldn't even like read a sentence and have it make sense. I couldn't edit any of the work that I had done. So I was thinking that I was brain damaged from the stroke. Um, and then with depression, it can manifest like insomnia or not being able to eat, having appetite issues. It could be this an intense feeling of sadness. For me, it was an intense feeling of, well, no feelings whatsoever. I had a flat affect. I just found no joy in anything. I attributed it to me not being able to get my job done because I wasn't functioning at the level that my brain was used to functioning. And eventually, after a couple of months of just trying to muscle through, which many of us do on a regular, in our regular lives, right? I I just came to a screeching halt. I could not function at work. I could not think. I couldn't do anything. I wasn't eating and I wasn't sleeping, which are two things your brain needs after a traumatic brain injury. So after a stroke specifically, for it to heal, you need rest and you need proper nutrition. And I wasn't getting either because of my anxiety and depression. I eventually had what I call a nervous breakdown where I stopped functioning. I found myself like at the bottom of a case of stairs, um, like curled up in the fetal position, just kind of rocking back and forth. My family was super, super concerned because this was just so unlike me, and I've just always kind of had it together, and I lost it, and I had to be hospitalized 2 times back to back in mental health institutions because I was not functioning, and I had lost touch with reality. I thought, oh gosh, I thought that my book was going to be a huge failure and that people were going to laugh at me and I was going to get fired and sued. And I was 100% convinced of these things. That was the anxiety talking. That was not the reality. That was just my anxious mind, like playing tricks on me. So, what I tell people is that when you are in the throes of anxiety or deep depression, your brain is lying to you, but you believe those lies because you don't know any better. And it's very, very scary. Especially, I had had anxiety before in my life and had always been on kind of a low dose anti anxiety medication. But I had never had debilitating anxiety. I ended up being diagnosed with major depressive disorder and generalized anxiety disorder. Um, and so I did make it through that period. It took me probably a year or so. I went to see a psychiatrist and I got put on some psych meds, but we had to play around with the combination of psych meds to make a difference in the long run because no one medication is a perfect cure all for everybody's conditions. And you just kind of have to test and learn as you go. And it sucks because you want to be fixed right away. And having to just wait for the medication to kick in and see if it's working or not working, and then trying new medications. It's a process of trial and error. And it is so um, just, it's grueling and you have to stick with it. And the scary part is so many people give up. And, I did one night think about taking my own life. It's the first time and only time in my entire life that I've ever thought about that. And I really seriously came close, came very close. It's just so unlike me and just so scary. But with regular therapy, talk therapy with a therapist, seeing my psychiatrist monthly until I got my meds under control. And I still see him about every 6 months to get to just calibrate and make sure that my medication is working right. And then I went through an intensive outpatient program. It's called an IOP. It's like basically a 6 week program, 3 days a week, 3 hours at a time. So you're getting 9 hours of therapy in a group session a week for 6 straight weeks. And that saved my life. It honestly saved my life. It was so critical to my health and my recovery. But it didn't cure me, it just set me on the road to success. And then I just kept going to therapy. I kept doing all the things that my therapist said, all the things that I learned in my IOP. And and then after a while, and just after some trial and error, I developed a list of what I now call my mental health hacks. And I don't do them all every day, but I pull them out of my toolbox when I feel like I need them. And I'll use at least a few of them on a daily basis to manage my mental health because I'm so scared of eventually ever going back to that dark place again. And so I do everything I can to make sure I don't go there again.
You know, your story is very touching. Like I was holding back tears a little bit. But I'm 46 now, and I'm like, yeah, I understand exactly what you're talking about. Just constantly go, go, go. I don't even know what I would do. Well, I did. I had a baby 10 months ago, and
Oh,
I couldn't walk for the first,
congratulations.
thank you. I couldn't walk for the first 3 months. And so I'm still working on that. I still fall over and I can't get my balance. So I'm sitting, I didn't have a stroke. It was the epidural, but
Oh,
I am still struggling and still, you know, trying to be, I have to hold on to things. As I often will use her stroller or cart or whatever. Um, and so I notice when I leave the house how much more I'm struggling than I think I am. I'm like, I'm good. But at home, every single thing is set up for me to be able to get up here or sit down. I have the whole
yeah.
house set up so I can function. So I'm sitting here relating very much to your story, and
Yeah.
that's very difficult. I so you also have other. You're also an advocate for stroke victims. Can you talk about your advocacy and how what you do and where?
Yeah. I've been speaking at different stroke support groups, and sorry, sometimes I stumble over my words. That's just an effect from the stroke. I notice it, you probably don't, but I sometimes struggle with my words or getting them out of my mouth. They come into my brain, and then I can't always get them out of my mouth. Um, but I've been speaking to stroke support groups. I really want people to understand that post-stroke anxiety and post-stroke depression are very real and that you need to seek treatment and help. Don't try to muscle through it by yourself because these are real conditions that typically need medication or some kind of intervention. If you had cancer, you wouldn't think twice probably about going and having chemotherapy or radiation or whatever they prescribe for you. So you shouldn't be reluctant to seek medical treatment for mental health issues as well. So treating your mental health is so important. And I also want neurologists to understand that their patients will probably experience post-stroke depression or post-stroke anxiety, and that it's not just in their head or it's not just something that they had before and they're continuing to struggle with. So I'll tell you a really quick story. My first neurologist that I had since the day I had my stroke, I went to see him several months after I'd been experiencing horrible anxiety and depression. And I was crying in his office when he walked in. My husband was with me. And I said, Doctor, and I won't say his last name, but I was like, what is the connection between my stroke? What happened to my brain that now I have this horrible anxiety and depression? And he looked at me and without any bit of compassion in his eyes or his voice, he said, that's psychological, not neurological. You'll have to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist. He got up and walked out and never came back.
Wow.
And, and I continued to cry. And I was just like, I felt so dismissed. I felt like an idiot. I was like, well, what is my problem? I've never had these conditions before. And now, I had the stroke and now I have them. So something happened. It's like lightning struck my brain, but here I am having a neurologist tell me it's all in my head. Um, and that it had nothing to do with the stroke. And so eventually, a few months later, well, 8 months later, I had a car accident and they found out that I had had another stroke. Probably had the car accident because of the stroke. But the neurologist that I saw in the ER at that hospital was so kind and just had the best bedside manner. And I just took the opportunity and I asked her if she knew of any connection between stroke and anxiety and depression. And she looked at me and she said, absolutely. And she's like, the numbers are upwards to 50% of stroke survivors will have anxiety or depression. And she said, just a minute, I'll be right back. And she left the room and she came back with like 3 scientific studies printed out for me to take home. And I just thought, oh my God, like I'm heard. Somebody heard me and I'm not going crazy. This did happen in my brain. And it just she told me that my other neurologist must not be up on his science because she said it's clearly, there's a clear connection. And it's not just because you've suffered a traumatic event. It's because there's a chemical change in your brain when you have a stroke. So I would never want any other stroke survivor to have a neurologist basically dismiss them like mine did. So I would love it if, neurologists would understand that this is real and this is scary and this could take the life of their stroke survivor, months after the fact or years even after a stroke, because depression can cause suicidal thoughts. And how sad would it be for, a stroke survivor who survived one of the scariest events in the world to then turn around and want to take their own life? I mean, it's not fair, and it's not something that we should just sit by and let happen. If you've gone through such a traumatic experience, you should have the support and help that you need. It's very common for stroke survivors to go through rehabilitation. So I went through several months of physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy. And I would go to the rehab place every day for about 3 hours at a time and do these back-to-back appointments. My husband would take me every day. And what I wish and what I would love to see happen is for rehabilitation institutes to now add mental health therapy as part of your rehabilitation protocol. It's so important. Even if you're not experiencing signs of depression or anxiety, it doesn't hurt to be preemptive and to get out in front of it. And, to tell you the signs to look out for and what to watch for and how to just maintain solid mental health before anything happens. That would be ideal.
Do you have any current projects you're working on? Do you have anything coming up?
I you mentioned at the top of the hour that my identity crisis book, "You Are Not Your Career," would be publishing soon. I actually published it this week, so that's available on Amazon to buy. And what's crazy? Oh my God, crazy, crazy timing. So I wrote this whole book based on the identity crisis I had after my stroke when I thought I could no longer work in my communications profession again. Because like I said, I thought my brain didn't work. And when I had to go on disability that then turned into long-term disability, I grappled with thinking I would never return to the career that I loved and had built for almost 3 decades. And that was so hard. I didn't know who I was. I completely lost myself and I lost hope. And it's just so hard when you have your career suddenly ripped away from you for, very unexpectedly, from a health crisis or for any other reason. So that's why I wrote the book. And then just as I was putting the finishing touches on the book, I got laid off from my day job. And so the timing of my book and publishing it is just, it cannot be a coincidence. It has to mean that I'm supposed to be doing this full time. I'm supposed to be talking and sharing this message and helping other stroke survivors find their identity and to redefine their legacy and to live that legacy going forward with strength and grace and hope. So I have started taking classes and I'm going to become a certified life coach so that I can help other stroke survivors get through the crisis and recognize the symptoms of anxiety and depression and get ahead of them. So I think that's my calling now that I've been laid off from my day job. And because I've kind of been doing these things on the side as more of a passion project. But I think the universe is sending me a message.
I think so too. I think that's wonderful. Um,
Thanks.
yeah, is how can people support you or find you?
Yeah. Um, I've got a website, an author website at angiereadbooks.online. angiereadbooks.online. Not .com. And I'm building a coaching site, and that website address will be legacycoachingforher.com. Legacycoachingforher.com. Because I specifically want to help women, for the most part, define their legacy and unleash it. Because I think legacy is such an important word. When I was in my darkest, deepest hole, the night that I considered taking my life, the only thing that stopped me was thinking, well, a couple of things. First, thinking about my family. I mean, when you're in deep, dark depression, you are convinced that everyone would be better off without you. That's why it's so scary because your brain is lying to you. Um, but also, my other thought was, this is not my legacy. Taking my life is not my legacy. And I think that that was ultimately what stopped me. And so that was 6 years ago. And now I'm not, I haven't been sure what my legacy is, but I get such fulfillment out of sharing my story and talking to other stroke survivors and helping them through their situation by sharing my story and sharing what I've learned along the way. I wish I had somebody guiding me like that after my stroke. I think I would have felt so much better about my situation, like I wasn't just, making it all up or weak, because I felt very weak during that period of time.
I think that's a strong topic as well. I think a lot of women, I think that used to be the thought that we used to be seen as weak, but I don't see that at all. I think women take on way more than what
Yeah.
we need to, but we're quite strong. I'd say physically and emotionally, and that is a tough thing to be sitting there. I tell myself that actually is like, oh, you're weak, just get up and do it. And
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes you do need that, that voice in your head saying, get up and do it. But when you can't, that doesn't mean that you're weak. That does not mean that you got something wrong with you. That means that you can't right now. And I always add those words right now. So for you, walking outside the home might be difficult, but you can say it's difficult for me right now, because that just tells your brain that you've got a ways to go, that you're on a journey and that you will get there. And there's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, you're right. As women, we think that we have to be superwoman and do it all. And yeah, and I used to always be able to do that before my stroke. I like was unstoppable and was just always looking for that next achievement or accomplishment. And when I was forced to take a break from my life and to see things more clearly, I think, having the stroke, while I would never want to go through it again, I think it has made me much more of a mellow, centered person. I am much more mindful of my surroundings and much more mindful of how I spend my time and who I spend my time with. My kids are older, so I'm not just starting out like you are. My oldest is 24 and my youngest is 20, and I'm out visiting her in Arizona right now. I took a sabbatical from life as soon as I got laid off. My first thought in my head was, I need to get out of here. I need to get away. And so I just said, I'm going to Phoenix for a couple of weeks. I have a college roommate who lives down here and she's got a guest house. And I said, if her guest house is available, I'm going. And I did. That's one of the things I say in my identity crisis book is that after you're laid off or lose your job for any reason, you need to take time to reset and reprioritize and see what's important to you and to help find your purpose so that in your next career step, you're moving more toward your purpose than just, checking the box and bringing home a paycheck, which is important. But Are you living out your purpose, and are you living your legacy and leaving a legacy for your kids, your grandkids, the rest of your family to look back and go, yep, that was one strong woman.
That's precisely the things I'm going through right now. I'm like, well, I'm being extremely picky about who's in my life. You're not allowed to come over if I don't get a good feeling. If I feel worse when you're here, nope. I'm over
Don't
it.
do it. Yeah,
I'm
good
not
for you.
doing
Yeah. Put yourself at the center of your priorities, because if you can't take care of yourself first, you're not going to be able to take care of your baby or others around you. So you have to take care of yourself first, and just know that you're doing the right thing. There's no reason to spend extra energy on people that deplete our energy or that don't bring us joy.
You know what though? You're gonna be told, or I'm told I'm mean because I just won't allow people in my life if I don't find them uplifting or helpful. I'm like, if I feel worse, it's not allowed. You're mean, and I'm like, okay.
Isn't that crazy? Instead of just being assertive and just knowing what you want and not putting up with BS, um, you're seen as mean, where that's just not fair. A man in the same situation would probably not be seen as mean or called a bitch or something like that. I mean, but we have to protect ourselves. And I recently had to divorce one of my best friends because he was no longer bringing joy into my life, and he was actually causing more drama in my life. And I'm like, hey, I've had plenty of drama. I do not need any more. And so I cut him out. And I know he thought I was being a complete bitch, but I tell you what, I haven't thought twice about it since then. And it protects my own mental health, and it's protecting my force field of positivity around me, if you will.
It's so funny. All these things I'm telling I have my other daughter's 16 and I have a 10-year-old son. So a little bit age difference there. But that's what I tell them the same thing. Be very particular about who's allowed in your life. Make sure, that and do things for your purpose. That's why I started this whole podcast. I had one before that was just me by myself, and then I opened it up to interview other people, and I'm like, I feel like every single day I'm getting closer to my purpose and what I'm supposed to be doing. And I like this whole interview, it took me by surprise. I was not expecting you to come on and say, I mean, I read what you said, but it's different actually talking to you. I'm like, you know what I mean? You think of a stroke survivor, and honestly, you don't think of a beautiful woman who is a powerhouse, You know what I'm talking
Uh,
about? It's like I always think of, from when I was a kid, it was an older person. You said
and that's so funny because, you know, 20, 30 years ago, I would have considered myself old. I'm 53 now because I had my stroke when I was 46 and 47. And so it's been a little over 6 years. But yeah, most people, you picture a stroke survivor as being somebody maybe in their like 70s or 80s. But there are more and more young stroke survivors. In fact, they're called young stroke survivors because young strokes are happening more and more often. And it's actually really scary. A lot of people are getting that neck injuries from extreme sports, or even just like going to the chiropractor or getting in a car accident or something like that. You might have a carotid artery dissection that creates a clot that then gives you a stroke. And but if you can catch the stroke really early, like my husband did, you can survive and be close to back to normal. For me, thank God he didn't listen to me that morning when I told him not to call 911, because I would have died. I would have died. And if we had lived anywhere other than very close to a stroke center or a hospital that specialized in strokes, I probably would be very disabled at this point. Um, but I'm lucky I'm here. I can walk, I can talk. My brain does work. It was never broken. I never had brain damage. I just had anxiety and depression that were um, impacting how I viewed the world and what I was thinking. And so that's important to know that your recovery depends on how quickly you can catch a stroke and get to a hospital.
that's important. You know what? I wanted to thank you for coming on today. I'm going to have your links in the description box below so people can just click on and make it a lot easier. Man, your story is a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the power of resilience. Like, beautifully amazing story.
Thank you. That's funny. People always say how resilient I am, and I'm like, I'm so tired of having to be resilient. But life throws you curveballs. You've got to hit them out of the park. So I guess if people call me resilient, that's awesome.
Absolutely. I can understand that. If you found this episode inspiring as we did, be sure to check out Angie's books, especially Invisible Scars, available right now on Amazon. If you like this episode, please like, share, and subscribe, and share with all your friends. And remember, everyone, please stay magical, my friends. Thank you for joining us on this enlightening episode of the Zarlequan podcast. Remember to subscribe to our newsletter so you never miss a beat.